Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show where I take deep dive into somebody's perspective on movies. And this week, I have my very, very good friend Dave here to talk about some movies. And very exciting to have you on the show, Dave.
Thanks for having me back on. Always a good time.
Yep. This is the first time I actually have you on Lost in the Wasteland, as you've come on to my talk show quite a few times at this point, talking about a bunch of other random stuff, mostly baseball. But this is all about movies today. And seeing as this is your first time on here, always like to start off with the fun first question, which I feel like is everybody's favorite question when it comes to movies, which is, what's your favorite movie?
So this probably a lot of people won't agree with this one, but when I thought about it, the first thing that comes to mind for me is Star Wars Episode 2. And I know as far as Star Wars fans are concerned, that one's not very high on their list. But a couple of reasons why I think it sticks out for me. First of all, that was the first Star Wars movie I saw in theaters. So that really helped to get me into being a huge fan of that universe. Mm-hmm. So obviously I'm biased towards it. Second, that is like in the whole Star Wars timeline, that's like my favorite part, where Obi-Wan and Anakin become prominent characters. The Clone Wars are happening. Obviously a lot of that stuff didn't come till later, but once they added in like the cartoon and all and fleshed out the characters more and all that, it just made it all the better. Plus, we had some pretty good video games back in the day for Star Wars when those movies were coming out. So that was a good time.
I played Clone Wars so much.
Yes, that game was so fun.
Was it the Darth Reaper that you had to fight at the end, which was like a giant UFO?
Yeah.
Oh, man. That brings back some memories.
I put a lot of time into that.
That dealt with like Star Wars Legends and dealt with I felt like that dealt with a lot of the same stuff that Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars dealt with, because that dove into like Anakin really turning towards the dark side. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny that those games and those animated shows made the movies better because it gave a bunch of context to it, which I feel like there would be no like renaissance of people loving the prequels if it wasn't for Dave Filoni.
Right.
And Clone Wars.
And also a lot of people seem to really not enjoy the newest movies. So by comparison, they've gone back and they're like, perhaps we were too harsh.
They're just like, they walk up to George Lucas and just like pat him on the head. It's like, we treated you so poorly.
We were wrong.
In general, I think for me personally, like I still think the sequel trilogy has more better movies than the prequels. But, it's such an interesting time being a Star Wars fan at this point. And, I do think it's very interesting that a lot of people's experience with the prequels was heightened by the other stuff that wound up coming up, because you're right. God, it would be so cool to see an actual series of like Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen doing Clone Wars stuff.
Oh yeah, that would have been amazing.
I know, like everybody's like, we want those flashbacks in Kenobi, which like in hindsight, you could definitely tell Kenobi was supposed to be like a 2-hour movie. They were just like,
yeah.
But we did get Hayden Christensen, and also one of the most tragic moments of Darth Vader, just like, ugh. And we get it. He doesn't like sand.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If you could get past Padme and Anakin, I feel like the prequels are a lot better.
Yeah. Admittedly, they put too much focus on that.
Well, I don't even like if
And
they're
like,
written better.
yeah,
Because, like, no offense, George Lucas, but I don't think you're very good at writing romance here. Uh, but being a Star Wars fan, it's just nice to love Star Wars because I don't even think that's like a bare minimum anymore
yeah.
to be a Star Wars fan. On the contrary, I feel like you need to hate Star Wars to be a Star Wars fan for a lot of people. But Dave, what is your earliest memory of going to the movies?
So the earliest one I could think of that I actually remember, and as a side note too, I was actually talking to my mom recently because I she told me what the first movie was we ever went to see when I was real
Uh,
little, which I don't remember because I was too tiny, but it was Toy Story.
very nice.
But the one of the earliest memories that I can still recall myself was when I got freaked out seeing one of the Alien versus Predator movies.
Oh no.
I think that was like my first time ever seeing that kind of movie. And I don't know, I'm not really sure what I was expecting going in. I mean, I was still pretty young, but we got to the movie, it started, I felt fine, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is kind of creeping me out.
Well, I remember watching Predator for the first time and that scaring me. Now as an adult, I'm like, I love this. And it's just like I don't feel like I've ever sat and watched all of either of the AVP movies, but I've seen parts. And just the idea of a predator fighting a xenomorph is a pretty damn cool idea.
It is.
Which, like, that's why they did it. So they're just like, what if these two aliens fought each other? Because let's be real here. I feel like a xenomorph is much more of a trophy for a predator than a human. Because it's like, they're bred to just destroy people. So, but interesting. That's an interesting early trip to the movies. Time to go freak out Dave. Take him to see AVP. Now, Dave, do you have a particularly favorite genre of movies?
So I know those first couple were more along the lines of sci-fi, but I
Mhm.
feel like overall, probably my favorite is more along like the fantasy genre, stuff like Lord of the Rings, for example. I like, stuff that takes place in like older times like that with like sword and shield and also technically not a movie, but like the Witcher. I like that kind of universe. So I tend to gravitate more towards those kind of movies, I'd say.
Pretty cool. Got to toss that coin for The Witcher, Dave.
Indeed.
I I think we've talked about this. I'm trying to think if I talked to you about The Witcher, but like that first season was so confusing. But like I really thought
Yeah.
like the second season, I'm like, oh dang, I'm enjoying this a lot.
I,
And
I think one of the things that really got me to like it too was like I actually read the books
mhm,
that there's a couple of seasons tied into. So like it was really cool for me seeing them like actually use that source material. Because like, Lord of the Rings, a lot of us have seen it. I myself haven't read the books, but I have one of my closest friends. He's read them. He's super into it. So, it was always cool to me listening to him talk about, how much they respected the original books and used
mhm.
that to make the movies. So, kind of seeing that myself with The Witcher, that was a fun experience for me, tying those two mediums together like that.
And I know we've been expanding your fantasy horizons as we've been watching more Studio Ghibli.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Big fan of those.
because like I feel like that I feel like it's easier to make fantasy work in animation because like you have that hard undertaking of creating a whole entire world around it, and I feel like less and less like actual live action films and series actually make it work. I know it's quite the time to be a fantasy fan right now with House of the Dragon and the Rings of Power out right now, and everybody being like, this one's better. Which I'm just sitting here like, you've all completely lost your minds, and I'm reaping all the benefits. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, well, I got one to watch on Sunday night, got one to watch on Friday, so I'm happy.
I must admit, I didn't think Rings of Power would be that good, but I enjoyed the first couple episodes.
I was shocked with, well, I shouldn't have been shocked. It's Jeff Bezos money, but like sitting there watching this, just like, holy crap, how much was the budget on this? And oh, I would be a liar if I didn't like jaw drop when they showed Sauron for the first time just towering there. I'm like,
Yes.
what? Man, crazy. And you know, it's a pretty awesome time because I love fantasy, but I will argue that it is the hardest genre to make work.
Mhm.
Because I feel like inherently you have so much exposition to get through, and it's hard to not just get bogged down in it. But, you know, Lord of the Rings is like chef's kiss, crown jewel of fantasy movies. So, but now, Dave, do you have any particular favorite filmmakers?
So I guess this one would be pretty obvious, but I'll go with George Lucas for sure. And I know, like you said, he may not be like the best at writing a script, for example, but he one of the things that I love about Star Wars is how expansive that universe is. There's just so much to dig into with all the different characters and the development they go through, all these different races and planets, and it just feels like there's endless possibilities with what they can do with that franchise. And, we've got the movies, obviously. Now there's the shows, there's games, there's books. I loved collecting a lot of action figures when I was growing up. So I think just because of, how he was able to create that universe, that's just the biggest thing I love about what he did.
I feel like if anybody's questioning their love of George Lucas, they should just listen to Dave Filoni or Freddie Prinze Jr. talk about George Lucas, and then you'll be okay. It's like, I don't know if you've ever listened to the two of them talk about how much they love George Lucas and what he did with Star Wars, but like, there's one video I saw on TikTok of Freddie Prinze Jr. talking about the balance of the Force, and I'm just like, damn, Freddie Prinze Jr., I did not know you were such a nerd. Because, like, obviously he's Kanan.
Right, in Rebels.
But, like, he's, like, a Star Wars guy, and he's also a pro wrestling fan, too, which is also pretty cool for me. But, like, Freddie Prinze Jr., cool dude. But, like, just listening to Dave Filoni on the behind the scenes like round tables for the Mandalorian talk about the Duel of Fates, and just like just like mind blown. But that's the thing, you can argue that George Lucas is not quite the best screenwriter, not quite the best director, but he is the like peak ideas guy. Like, he created something special with Star Wars. And to be fair, there would be none of this without him. So, like, if you just, like, George Lucas, then, like, you like Star Wars, you have to give him credit. He created all of it. And it would be like being like, I love Lord of the Rings, but J.R.R. Tolkien. It's just like,
what?
What are you talking about? But like, they laid the groundwork, and I appreciate your answer because a lot of the times when I say filmmaker, most people answer with like a director. And like, obviously George Lucas has directed movies, but let's be real here. He's only directed 4 Star Wars movies. The first one, and then the prequels. But he created something so special, and I feel like you can tell nobody told him no with the prequels. And obviously he had a lot of constraints with Star Wars, the first film, because like not like it was made out of money.
Yeah.
Basically, R2D2 was a trash can with a little person inside it and stuff like that. So like they did their best, but just what he's created and the nature of the force and everything, it's really cool. And for those who want to get a really good perspective on George Lucas, check out Light and Magic, which is a new docu-series on Disney Plus. Because especially the first couple episodes, which is very Star Wars heavy, like you see the genius behind George Lucas, and not like the internet being like, oh, yes, oh, Hayden Christensen, oh yeah, that's my Anakin. Like all the silly videos that people like mock George Lucas with. But like actually listening to him, like he's a genius. Like him and James Cameron are probably the most dynamic creators in film. James Cameron's an asshole, but like you have to give him credit for being great. So, and George Lucas doesn't come without his flaws, but there's certain things that he's just amazing with. Now, Dave, who are some of your favorite actors and actresses?
Well, since we're on the topic of Star Wars, I obviously have to go with Ewan McGregor. I mean, he pretty much carried the prequels, which I love so much. Let's be real.
Hello there. General Kenobi.
That's another great thing about the prequels, is how many memes we've gotten out of them.
Honestly, the prequels, the love for the prequels 100% comes from the meme culture that's been around the prequels. But Ewan McGregor's a great actor, and like they didn't really I feel like he was really young and they didn't really give him a whole lot to flex with in Phantom Menace, but boy did he shine in Attack of the Clones, and especially Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. I actually, like, when I first saw those movies, like I didn't even realize it was him in the first movie. Like I thought they did like they did with Anakin and had like a different actor for like the younger version. It wasn't until years later I was like, it's the same dude.
Yeah.
And you know, also he didn't have the beard in the first movie, so
baby face McGregor.
And you know, the first movie, it was more Liam Neeson's time to shine with Qui-Gon.
Oh, Liam Neeson's. Like obviously, like Qui-Gon ended how Qui-Gon ended, but like Star Wars needed more Liam Neeson in it. we got a little bit, got an itty bitty bit in Kenobi. True. I feel like I could spoil that at this point, because if you haven't seen that on the internet, then like you're
I was just like, regardless of how that show was going to turn out, I was just so excited for them to dive back into Ewan McGregor's version of Obi-Wan again.
Yeah,
like, Obi-Wan is literally my favorite like fictional character from anything, so I was just super excited. And to throw in like another actor, we'll pick one not from Star Wars just to mix it up. This one's, I'm sure, is obvious to you as well, but we have to talk about Keanu Reeves.
Keanu.
And, you know, you and I have watched a lot of his movies together.
Yep.
Absolutely love John Wick. And even more beyond just the movies he's in, I just love how much of a down-to-earth dude he is. You know, you just hear all these stories all the time about how cool of a guy he is. There's like no drama surrounding him. He just seems like the kind of person you love to just like meet and talk to.
He is a genuine human being, and we love that about you, Keanu, who
Absolutely.
Obviously is not watching this show right now, but I wish he was. But like, you know, between watching the Matrix films together and John Wick films together, and, you know, Keanu Reeves has a specific thing that he's great at. And when he's doing it, he's great at it. And he legitimately could kill you. That's the craziest thing. Like all those things he does in John Wick, I was like, this dude's actually doing these things. But like watching him do all his practice on those courses and stuff like that, I'm like, this man is a killing machine. And that teaser for John Wick Chapter 4, it's like, hey, John, you ready? Yeah. I'm like, that's all I needed. I just needed Keanu Reeves to say, yeah, and I'm good. We got this. Keanu. He's great. Now, Dave, what's a movie you feel like you could watch every day?
Let's see. So, when I first thought about this question, I tried to think about what movies have I watched the most times in my life. So, obviously some of the ones we talked about already, I've seen plenty of times. So, the interest of mixing it up. First, the ones that came to mind that I watched a ton when I was little were a couple different Adam Sandler movies.
Nice.
I used to watch, like I had the VHS tapes for Mr. Deeds and Big Daddy.
Nice.
And I watched them like over and over and over again and never got tired of them.
I literally watched Mr. Deeds yesterday.
That's hilarious.
Johnny McEnroe.
Like prime Adam Sandler movies those were just so good.
You two tricked me into coming into work today. Touche.
And I think beyond that, and I think you'll like this answer, one of the first ones that came to mind for me is Shrek.
Yep.
I could watch that a lot of times over and over, and I have, and it doesn't get old.
That is indeed my answer to this question, is Shrek.
Why am I not surprised?
You got your Smash Mouth, you got your Mike Myers, you got your Eddie Murphy. Ogres are not like parfaits. How about cakes? Cakes have layers. Do you know the Muffin Man? The Muffin Man? The Muffin Man! I feel, what the hell was I quoting? I was quoting Shrek 2 yesterday. It was the whole thing. It's like, Pinocchio, tell a lie. Say you're wearing ladies' underwear. It's like, I'm wearing ladies' underwear. Are you? It's like, it's a thong. Oh, man. Those movies are so funny. And I remember seeing Shrek in theaters when I was 10 years old and loving it. And then when you're an adult, you just love it even more because then you get all the hard, like the dirtiest jokes. Shrek ages like a fine wine. And Shrek too. Jennifer Saunders holding out for a hero. It's legit fairy godmother.
Those movies had such fun soundtracks.
They sure do. I had the first Shrek soundtrack on CD.
Yeah, I had those CDs.
And I remember having a CD of the Shrek karaoke dance party too.
Nice.
And all the random covers that they had. And Far, Far Away Idol. Yep. Donkey singing Disco Inferno, which like Eddie Murphy could actually sing, so that's pretty cool. Oh my god, Captain Hook singing Hooked on a Feeling. Shrek's too good for us. So now, what's a film that you connect with, Dave, because it relates to another interest of yours?
So the first interest that came to mind for me is how much I love video games. So I tried thinking of some movies that connect to that. And obviously there's a lot of not very good ones.
Sad.
I thought about it, and I feel like a lot of times movies that tie into gaming tend to do better when they don't try to focus on one specific game.
Mhm.
So like one example I have is Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
You know, it's not trying to emulate any one game or draw from one source. You know, it just kind of has little references here and there to different games, but also does its own thing. And, you know,
Hubert.
I think that's a really fun movie to watch, whether you're a gamer or not. I
Yeah.
feel like, you know, it's just a fun time. If you get the references, it's all the better. But if not, you're not going to be lost. It's just there to add a little fun. But, you know, the whole experience is great. Another one would be like Ready Player One. That was
Mhm.
another one I enjoyed for similar reasons. You know, it had again a ton of references you could pick up on the background, but it wasn't trying to just do one movie, you know, for one game. Like one of the first good ones, or I guess a couple of good ones that tied more directly to one franchise would be like Detective Pikachu.
Yep.
It wasn't like incredible, but it did an admirable job, I felt, tying back to Pokemon. Obviously, the new Sonic movies, those have been really fun. You know, I love Jim Carrey as Robotnik.
Yep.
He's he's a really fun character in that. But you know, I think those were the ones that stood out to me the most, and I do appreciate seeing that they're kind of starting to find their footing and what works and creating a movie that ties into gaming.
Mhm.
You know, we do still see a lot of things that don't do so well, whether it be a movie or a show. Like I know you were telling me, yeah, what was it, Resident Evil? I think just had a show recently. That's
It
when
got
it seems like,
canceled already.
yeah. So
One
that, that
season.
that's what I mean when like they try to focus on one thing. I feel like it doesn't work. And I don't know, maybe it's because the people making the movie don't understand the material they're drawing from, or maybe, you know, a video game, depending on the genre, there's just not a lot of source material to begin with. You know,
I just don't get how they keep. So like the Paul W. S. Anderson Resident Evil movies are like
mhm.
their own thing. I feel like at this point, but like, how can't you adapt the original Resident Evil? It's terrifying. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like,
I,
legitimately. And it's so disappointing that they can't get that to work. But my God, I was shocked with how much they leaned into fandom in Sonic 2.
mhm.
Oh, the final battle. That got me so excited. I'm just sitting here like thinking about playing Sonic Adventures DX, the director's cut, and just being
Yeah.
oh my God. And you know, Detective Pikachu, God, they captured Ludicolo too well. Ludicolo! And Psyduck. Psyduck was an asshole. Let's be very frank about that. Um, but like, there are certain things about that movie. It just works so well. And of course, we have a special place for Mortal Kombat, 1995's Mortal Kombat.
Oh, of course.
Oh man. Hey baby, did you miss me? Um, Puppet Goro is better than anything.
Yes.
Those are $500 sunglasses, asshole. Oh, that's literally Shang Tsung's only there to have one battle and then say all the catchphrases from the video game. Flawless victory. Only comes second to your soul is mine. Um, we had such a fun time with Mike that one time. Just the
It
three of
was.
us in a whole entire lecture hall watching Mortal Kombat. But yeah, I get it. The video game stuff. Uh, why did we get things like Super Mario Brothers though?
Yeah, I'm still worried about the new one that they're working on now too.
You mean with Chris Pratt
Yeah.
disrespecting Italian Americans?
I'm starting to wonder if like the same thing that happened with Star Wars is going to happen, where people are going to be like, you know what? I don't like this, and I kind of like the old one more now.
If that happens, I'm gonna be like, I'm done. Goodbye, people. Goodbye. I can't. Oh my god. I don't even know what, like, you know what the Super Mario Brothers movie felt like? You know how Sonic Adventures was just like a dinosaur game, except in Star Fox Adventures, and they took a dinosaur game and just threw Star Fox in it?
Yeah.
That's what that movie felt like. They're like, we're gonna make a dinosaur world and then just throw Mario in it and Luigi.
Just because we can.
Let's get this straight. Toad has a big head, little body. Goombas have big heads, little bodies, not small heads, big bodies.
You had one job.
You had one job. Oh, that movie's grotesque. Like, look at some of the stuff in it. I'm just like, who designed this? And they had one job: make Yoshi green.
Yeah.
Like, why? Why did you make him yellow? Like, to be honest, I get that they made him just like a tiny T-Rex. Okay, that makes sense. But like, you couldn't do one thing, couldn't make him green. Like, one thing. Did they not have the rights to Bowser either? That they're just like King Koopa. I'm just like, oh man, what a weird ass movie. One line that sticks out to me in that movie is when Mario's like, oh, I was gonna take it to WrestleMania. I'm like, confirmed Mario, pro wrestling fan over here. Because WrestleMania 10 was in Madison Square Gardens. It was an actually informed reference. There you go. It's where the real details in the script came in, was getting pro wrestling accurate references. Not actual video game accurate references, but at least they got the pro wrestling ones.
They got something right.
They got something right. Now, Dave, who's a character that you feel like you connect with on a personal level?
So this one I thought about for a while, and I thought this answer might sound a little silly, but the answer I came up with is Ned from Spider-Man.
Nice. Hey, we always need somebody in the chair.
Exactly. Obviously on the surface level, we're both super nerds, but I also like the kind of character and personality he has, where he's kind of like a ride or die friend. And he's not trying to be the guy on the front lines doing something, but he tries to do what he can. Like, he knows his limits and tries to do what he does best in a supporting role. And I don't know, I feel like I kind of identify with that. Even like that even bleeds over, not just in real life, but even like in games that I play in a team setting, for example. That tends to be like the kind of character I like to play, rather than like someone on the front lines. I like to be someone that supports the team. So he's the answer I came up with. I don't know. I think he's a fun, underrated character from those movies.
Dave, embrace the support class. We appreciate it.
Of course.
I'm definitely a tank. I'm just gonna go in and take punishment, dish out punishment. That's why I play Ganondorf in Super Smash Brothers.
I'll heal you back up.
I am the one person that primary is just Ganondorf. There's only one. I only play as Ganondorf. But I appreciate that. Ned's a fun character. Ned got to do some fun magic too. Got to learn some
Yes.
Got to learn some sorcery in No Way Home. Which, speaking of, it's re-released in theaters, almost wins the box office because that's how terrible the box office is right now. Crazy. But I hope Ned comes back. It'll be interesting to see what they wind up doing with Spider-Man moving forward.
Yeah.
Marvel's obviously has plenty of plans for a lot of characters moving forward, so we'll see how that goes. Now, Dave, what's a movie that you love that you think will surprise people besides Attack of Clones?
True. So I guess getting back into the fantasy genre, there's this movie that's like really it's an awful movie. It's called In the Name of the King. And
oh my god, the Dungeon Siege movie?
yes. You've seen it?
I have not, but I understand the reputation.
So obviously you know at least that it has a reputation for being awful. And yep. I agree with that. But the reason I like it is because I had a fantastic first time seeing it. When we went to the movies, it was just me and one of my other friends in high school. And, you know, back then we didn't like pay attention to movie reviews or whatever. We just, you know, went to the theater on a Friday night or whatever. And we're like, all right, what do we want to see? And we're like, all right, this looks cool. It's an action movie, you know, and it you know, we both like Lord of the Rings. It kind of looked like that same kind of setting. And, you know, after seeing the movie, it did obviously feel like they were trying to capture that same sort of feel. They even had the same actor in it as Gimli.
John Rhys Davies was in the Dungeon Siege movie. Oh, man.
They had actually some high-profile actors in that movie.
Jason Statham and Ray Liotta are both in it.
Yep, and Ron Perlman.
Oh my god.
But like the movie, like everything about it was just like so bad. Like even having actors as great as that, just like the performances felt stiff, the props looked cheap. And like the funny thing was my friend and I were like sitting in the back row of the theater and we're both just like laughing our butts off the whole time, like hysterically laughing out loud. And no one else in the theater was. Like they were all taking this movie seriously.
You were having enough fun for everybody. Which also, Burt Reynolds was in this. What?
Yeah. Like, how do you get all these actors in the movie and still not get it right?
Well, because you're UA Bowl.
Yeah, that's why. I remember like there were some kids sitting down towards the front of the theater too. And I guess they were like talking and laughing during the movie too or something. And like the guy sitting behind them like stood up and like yelled at them for being too loud. Like got really angry. And like it was just like a surreal moment as like a moviegoer. You know, like you have expectations when you go to the movie. You know, you get your popcorn, your soda, you sit there in silence, maybe whisper with your family or friends you're with, and just enjoy being cut off from the world and sitting in a movie theater for a couple hours. And that was just so different and fun of an experience being at the theater that we both like enjoy watching that movie again because it brings back that same feeling from when we saw it the first time. It's funny, I just saw him the other day, and we didn't end up watching it, but he did bring it with him because we were talking about it. So we are probably going to watch it again pretty soon. It was actually our backup option in case we didn't like the new Lord of the Rings.
Damn. So to put in perspective, there's In the Name of the King, a Dungeon Siege tale. There's In the Name of the King, Two Worlds, starring Dolph Lundgren. And In the Name of the King, The Last Mission. Which, yeah, he's been continuing to make these movies.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I remember one of the funniest things I saw, though, was when I looked at the budget for the second movie, they lowered the budget so much that even if that movie brought in zero revenue, it still would have lost less money than the first movie.
Oh my God. And like I see he just keeps making uh these Rampage movies. I saw the first Rampage. That movie's messed up. Like so messed up. And then he's made the Blood Rain movies.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, UA Ball. And he goes around acting like he like God's gift to filmmaking too, which is hilarious. But Dave, my last question for you is, what do you love most about movies?
I think what I love most is just how much, how thought provoking they are, how much it opens up discussion between people and gives them something to connect on. Like Star Wars, for example, there's a big fandom. We talked about how much world building there is there. There's other movies and shows too that just have these massive followings and fandoms. And even if it's not like a particular franchise, even just whether it's certain movie directors or certain genres, or you might just be really into films in general. I know you're more familiar with like stuff that like a critic might look at of what objectively makes a movie good, and that's another thing that you could discuss with people. And I think it's cool how everyone looks for something different and has a different experience. So whether a movie is objectively good or bad, it could be totally different how much it's enjoyed by somebody.
Yep.
And I think you see that online with like Rotten Tomatoes scores, for example. There's a lot of movies where the critic score and the audience score are so vastly different. And
there's somewhere that's actually accurate, not just review bombing.
Yes, fair. Those aside, there are just, a movie, critics could hate it and people could still love it. Or, it could be the other way around too. But
any
at the
Adam
end of the
Sandler
day,
movie.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think that's what I like most about them, is that it's just everyone sees it differently, and it just makes for some interesting discussions.
It's funny because I was having somebody was shocked because I told them I hate the Blair Witch Project. I'm like, I wish they died. Like those characters are so annoying that I'm like, I'm glad you're lost in the woods. I wish I wasn't watching you lost in the woods. Like that was my first reaction to watching that. And like I didn't watch that until I was like out of college. So like I didn't get caught up in the hype at the beginning where people thought it was like a real movie. It's like, no, these are real people. I know people this annoying. But like, it's a very interesting thing because people have certain films that they absolutely love and a lot of people hate them. Or you might hate a movie that a whole bunch of other people love. Or, you could be talking about The Last Jedi, and which is like either you absolutely love it or absolutely hate it. And people were so fiery about it. Fandoms in general. MCU, I honestly, on some level, I can't even anymore. It's like, get over it. She-Hulk twerked. Like, it happened. And, like, it didn't destroy the MCU. So, like,
No.
calm down. But Dave, so my wild card is that I let my guest ask me a question. So, what would you like to ask the Wasteland Reviewer?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Just Uno reversed you.
So I mentioned a little bit ago how you're more familiar with, looking at a movie from like a critic's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So how about when you're looking at a movie like that, what would you say are maybe like the top three things you look at in a movie that tend to make or break it?
For me, definitely the top one is like I always look for like the visuals. I'm very much a cinematography person. So like if I'm watching a movie and this looks like garbage, I'm gonna be like, "Hmm." This is very specific to a genre, but action. Like if I'm watching an action movie and one, I can't tell what the hell's going on, or two, you take 16 cuts to get Liam Neeson to hop a fence and Taken 3. Like, what the hell are you doing? And for me, a big one is the actual like cinematic experience of it. Because here's the thing. If like I could read a book, I can listen to a song. What makes movies so dynamic is it works on so many different levels. And if you're not maximizing that, then what are you even doing? And like, it takes a movie a lot. It takes a lot for a movie for me to love it if it doesn't do anything interesting visually. So like, that's why I love A24 films. All of them look interesting. Some of them make no sense or they're like really out there. But like watching like a lot of dramas, it's like unless you're doing something very interesting with the camera or something like that, it's just people interacting with other people. So
Yeah.
like I feel like I appreciate when people maximize the fact that this is a visual medium. And God, don't beat me over the head with your exposition. Like, I'm gonna quote the movie adaptation. Stop having narration. It's lazy screenwriting. Which also is hilarious because adaptation actually legitimately has one of the best narrations in movies. Nick Cage. But like that's the thing. It's like very few directors and screenwriters can make narration really work. Martin Scorsese. Just firing all out there. But like I look for the visuals, I look for how you bring it to life. And like I love 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's one of my favorite films of all time. There's like no characterization in that. Like the only character that has any real characterization is a robot. HAL 9000. Like none of the astronauts do. They're like bland as hell. But like it's the themes and the ideas and the visuals and everything that really brings that to life for me. So those are a lot of the things that I look for. I know there's people out there that have their preferences to like, they really have to get engaged in the story. They have to really care about the characters. That kind of stuff is like the cherry on top for me. It's not the first thing that I look for, but also if you do a really bad job with them, I'll notice very quickly. Like, if your protagonist is annoying and unlikable, I'm going to be like, why am I spending all this time with this person? But, you know, that was a good question. I enjoyed that, Dave. But, Dave, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This was a fun discussion.
And you'll be back again.
It sure will.
Dave Tenaglia will return. But thank all of you for tuning in and always supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.